In the underwater city of Rapture, the citizens believed that after such a terrible year, the issues that had plagued the city had been resolved, but more trouble was just around the corner. In Persephone,
Sinclair had put Sophia Lamb to work as a therapist for the other inmates, hoping to make them docile, although she had actually converted them to her cause, eventually leading an uprising within the prison, taking control from Sinclair and gaining her freedom. With Sally falling into the hands of Sander Cohen, he sends her to the sunken department store, fearing that members of the Rapture family would tell Sophia Lamb of his conduct since her imprisonment. Stanley Poole exploits a dangerous flaw in the Dionysus Park construction, flooding the park and killing all witnesses to his misdeeds. Having had time to research and discover where DeWitt was, Elizabeth puts her plan in motion to take her revenge. On New Year's Eve 1958, Elizabeth enters Booker's office. Unaware of who she is, Elizabeth convinces him that Sally is still alive. Together, they track down Sander Cohen, where he reveals he knows where Sally is, but in exchange, Booker and Elizabeth have to dance to inspire him on his painting. Booker and Elizabeth begin a slow, uncomfortable waltz, but the dance is cut short when Cohen finds an error in them and has them electrocuted into unconsciousness. Booker and Elizabeth awaken, both inside Cohen's bathysphere. He informs them through radio that Sally is somewhere in the sunken department store. Fighting through splices, they make their way using a tram to the department store. They find Sally being chased off into a ventilation system. By turning on the heat in the system, Sally is forced out. To his horror, Booker sees that she has been turned into a little sister. Sally calls out for her Big Daddy. After seemingly killing the Protector, Booker once again tries to pull the girl from the vent. Suddenly, he relives his forgotten memories and remembers his past as Zachary Hale Comstock and his attempts to take Anna, which ended up accidentally decapitating her in the process. Elizabeth expresses anger and resentment at Comstock, and she and the Lutesses reveal that he had the twins send him to Rapture to forget his past, reverting him back to Booker DeWitt to start a new life there. A horrified, penitent Comstock apologises to Elizabeth for what he had done, but she doesn't accept this. He is suddenly impaled from behind through the chest by the still living Protector's drill, killing Comstock and fulfilling Elizabeth's vengeance. The Big Daddy then turns on Elizabeth and throws her through a wall, impaling her on a piece of rebar, killing her. Elizabeth finds herself in an illusion of what she perceives Paris to be. With remorse of using Sally to kill Booker, she plans to return to Rapture. The Lutesses explain that she remained in existence because of her quantum superposition, and that she could not return to Rapture without collapsing her unique quantum state. Returning would remove her abilities as a result of returning to a dimension where she had died. By returning, all that she would have left is her knowledge from her books and her memories from what she saw behind the doors. Despite warnings from the Lutesses, she demands to be brought back to Rapture to save Sally. Experiencing amnesia from being placed back in Rapture, Elizabeth wakes up to find Atlas and his thugs scavenging Comstock's corpse and capturing Sally. Her subconscious creates a vision of Booker DeWitt that acts as her scrambled memories from previously being omnipotent. Being fed information by her subconscious, she claims to be Suchong's lab assistant and tells Atlas that she can help him escape the sunken department store and return to Rapture in exchange for Sally's freedom, in which he agrees. Leaving Atlas, she comes across her own corpse and understands the situation that she is in. With broken information from her subconscious, she makes her way to Suchong's lab in the Silver Fin restaurant and finds a Lutece device that has been built there. After fixing the device, she enters a tear into the Finkton district of Columbia, where Suchong has been watching Fink's research. She obtains a Lutece particle, which she hopes to use to lift the department store back up to the rest of Rapture. To get back to Rapture, Suchong demands that Elizabeth retrieve a hair sample from Jeremiah Fink's hidden laboratory, a piece of hair that had once belonged to Elizabeth as a child during her bonding experiments. Retrieving the hair sample, Elizabeth comes back into Rapture and sends the hair sample to Suchong, where he uses it to continue research on pair bonding for the Big Daddies. With Ryan sending down men to kill Atlas's goons, Elizabeth navigates them to Fontaine's office and places the Lutece particle on a roof, floating the building back to Rapture, bringing with it Atlas and his men. Atlas subsequently betrays Elizabeth and has her knocked out with chloroform. That night, in a televised broadcast, Ryan acknowledges the trials in the previous year, but offers a toast to the city that 1959 might be Rapture's finest year. Just moments after his broadcast, a group of Atlas's organised terrorists launched an attack on Rapture's elite at the Kashmir restaurant.
Finally leaving Persephone,
Sophia Lamb orchestrates the abduction of her daughter so that Subject Delta will come to save her. She then uses a hypnotised Big Daddy plasmid and forces him to shoot himself.
With Subject Delta dead, Lamb retreats back to Persephone with her daughter.
The attack on the Kashmir restaurant resembled a powder keg, igniting all the class conflict and frustration that existed just below the surface of Ryan's betrayal of his ideals with the nationalisation of Fontaine Futuristics. This created the useful recruiting tool for Fontaine's new persona, Atlas. Soon posters asking "Who is Atlas?" sprouted up all over Rapture. With unrest, terrified citizens pulled all of their money out of the banks, causing an economic collapse. Many of the people who resided in Fontaine's poorhouses became the first recruits to an army aimed at overthrowing Ryan and seizing Rapture. The Civil War brought a huge increase in Adam usage. Combat plasmids like Incinerate and Electrobolt saw a huge jump in sales, and with it, a significant increase in the unpleasant side effects of excessive splicing. As citizens spliced themselves for their own self-defense, the city as a whole started to become increasingly mentally unstable and further addicted to Adam. Dr. Suchong suggested an unconventional means of breaking the stalemate that currently divided the city. He proposed altering the structure of the available plasmids to make the users susceptible to mental suggestion by pheromones. This represented the ultimate betrayal of Ryan's philosophy, to deny citizens even the ability of free will itself. Ryan agreed, and it worked, turning the Civil War's fate in Ryan's favour. After coming in and out of consciousness for 2 weeks, Elizabeth reawakens to a war-torn Rapture. Atlas once again promises that he'll let Sally and herself go if she can find his ace in the hole. Using her scrambled memories, she enters Suchong's secret lab, finding a wounded bouncer-type Big Daddy near 2 little sisters blocking the way. Elizabeth attempts to get him out the way, looking through Suchong's notes as he is still struggling with pair bonding the Big Daddies to the little sisters, revealing that the Big Daddies need the Adam of the little sisters to survive. When telling the little sisters that the Big Daddy needs their genetic material to heal, one of the girls extracts Adam from the other and injects it into the Big Daddy, healing him, thus successfully pair bonding him with the little sisters. Elizabeth later comes across Suchong with the little sister. Frustrated with his research not working and the little sister's need for attention, he slaps one of the girls, unaware that she has been successfully pair bonded with the Big Daddy, resulting in the Big Daddy killing him. Elizabeth retrieves the ace in the hole from Suchong's body, revealed to be an encoded message of chemical compounds. This breakthrough leads to the bonding of Bouncer and Rosie Big Daddies to little sisters. With the bonding system now working, the pairs are deployed into the public space of Rapture. Elizabeth returns to Atlas and hands him the ace in the hole, in which he bludgeons Elizabeth with a wrench. Angrily, he asks Elizabeth to reveal what the chemical compounds mean, in which she replies, "Would you kindly," after having a vision. Upon hearing this, he gives Elizabeth one final blow and leaves to continue his plans of taking control of Rapture by bringing back his sleeper agent. As Elizabeth dies, Sally holds her hand. Elizabeth has a vision of the events to come, and knows that she has died for a reason. Over the following year, more residents splice. The people who survive and keep their sanity stay barricaded in small holdouts within the city, while Sophia Lamb continues to build up more followers,
who escaped the bloodshed in Persephone.
Ryan fast-tracks the Vita Chambers project, a device that would resurrect him or anyone close to his genetic makeup if they died traumatically, covering himself if he is attacked. He then puts all the bathyspheres into a genetic lockdown so that no one but him can leave the city or travel between buildings. While many die on both sides for the fight for control, sections of Rapture are closed. With multiple attacks, bombings, and insane Adam-addicted splices, Rapture becomes an incredibly dangerous place to be, trapped under the ocean, with nowhere to go. Now, in 1960, upon Fontaine's summons, using the trigger phrase "Would you kindly," Jack boards a plane and hijacks it, forcing it to crash land at the coordinates of a lighthouse, the main entrance to Rapture. Entering the lighthouse, Jack enters a bathysphere and is taken into the unrecognisable city of Rapture. As he shares a similar genetic makeup as his father, Andrew Ryan, bathyspheres and Vita Chambers work for him. upon witnessing a brutal splicer attack. Atlas contacts Jack through a shortwave radio. He promises to help him find a functioning bathysphere in exchange for Jack helping him find Atlas's fictional wife and son who are trapped in Neptune's bounty. Ryan notices that there is someone new in Rapture. Convinced that Jack is a Russian agent or part of the CIA, he sends splicers and security devices to Jack, believing that he could make an already disintegrating situation even worse. On his way, Jack encounters the once brilliant minds of Rapture turn mad through Adam withdrawal. He bumps into one of the few same members of the previous Rapture's best and brightest, Bridget Tenenbaum, who implores him not to hurt the little sisters, as she is dedicated to saving and curing them. Arriving at Neptune's bounty, Ryan's splicers destroy the sub, apparently killing Atlas's wife and son. Jack escapes and is told by an angry Atlas that Ryan must be stopped. On his journey, Jack finds the body of Jasmine Jolene, who has been murdered by Ryan after discovering her involvement with Fontaine. He later meets the deranged Sander Cohen. Arriving at Hephaestus, the power facility of Rapture and the home of Andrew Ryan, Atlas asks Jack, "Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch? It's time to finish this." Jack discovers that Ryan has set the entire complex to self-destruct. When reaching Ryan's office, he sees a "Would you kindly" board on display for him. Here, he meets Ryan. Now aware that Jack is actually his son, he educates him about his true self, telling him of his birth, his conditioning, his experiences in Rapture, and the phrase "Would you kindly," which has been controlling his actions. He explains the fundamentals between a man and a slave, that a man chooses, a slave obeys. He then hands Jack a golf club and orders Jack to kill him. Jack obeys, beating his father to death, revealing how powerless Jack really is. With the office Vita chamber deactivated, Ryan dies and is unable to be resurrected. With Ryan eliminated, Jack takes the genetic key to Rapture systems from his corpse and shuts down the self-destruct mechanism, unknowingly handing Rapture over to Atlas. Atlas now reveals his true identity as Frank Fontaine and thanks Jack for handing the keys to Rapture to him, later attempting to kill Jack using the city's security devices. Jack escapes with the help of Tenenbaum's little sisters by entering a vent, which collapses, knocking him unconscious. Jack wakes up in Tenenbaum's sanctuary, where she informs him that while he slept, she removed most of the mental conditioning and is no longer vulnerable to the "Would you kindly" command, although he is still vulnerable to the Code Yellow command, which causes Jack's heart to begin the process of shutting down. With the help of Tenenbaum, Jack finds and uses the cure for the conditioning, Lot 192, which was developed by Dr. Suchong, and becomes completely free from Fontaine's mind control. Now free and in control of himself, Jack plans to take Fontaine down. In order to pursue Fontaine, Jack is forced to partially become a big daddy to trick a little sister into thinking that he is one of their protectors, so that she can lead him to Fontaine. The only physical change that he undertakes is the automated vocal cord surgery. Afterward, Jack confronts a now heavily spliced Fontaine in a final battle. Fontaine knocks Jack to the ground. As Fontaine is about to attack Jack, a group of little sisters pounce on Fontaine with the hypodermic syringes they used to extract Adam, now extracting all of the Adam out of Fontaine, killing him. Now free of Fontaine, Jack escapes to the surface using a bathysphere with the little sisters, one of them being Sally, and raises them as his daughters. Tenenbaum leaves Rapture, and Elizabeth's sacrifice seems worth it. After the death of both Andrew Ryan and Frank Fontaine, Sophia Lamb could truly move through Rapture without fear. She learned about Fontaine's program of genetic tampering that had created Jack's conditioning and was inspired by it. She saw Jack's actions under the influence of the "Would you kindly" as an example of perfect altruism, acting to uphold the common good without any introspection or free will. Thus, Lamb began her attempts to create an intellect that would be completely selfless and good. Later meeting Gilbert Alexander, she converted him to her altruistic beliefs. Her plan required giving a subject massive doses of Adam, collected from the alive and deceased Rapture citizens, which contain their memories and genius. Sophia worked with Dr. Alexander over several years to rehabilitate Eleanor. Eventually, they were able to undo her little sister's mental conditioning, but they could not remove the sea slug that had been implanted within her. As the little sisters grew older in Rapture, the psychological and mental conditioning forced upon them had a terrifying aftermath on their bodies. Although they could no longer produce Adam themselves, their exposure to the substance made them grow taller than most normal girls their age and granted them incredible strength. The mental conditioning given to them by Dr. Su Chong, which once tricked them into seeing Rapture as a beautiful utopia, slowly drove them insane and made them highly aggressive. The girls also had traces of plasmids found in the Adam they had recycled. This began to show in the girls' genes, allowing them to use these dangerous powers against anyone who crossed them. As more and more of the little sisters began to turn into these feral beasts, Dr. Alexander decided to use new mental conditioning methods and advanced diving suits to convert the girls into a new form of protector, the Big Sister. Due to his guilt of turning Sophia's daughter Eleanor into a little sister, he volunteered as Sophia's first subject. Unfortunately, the experiment began to go wrong as the Adam distorted Gilbert's genetic structure, eventually driving him mad and severely mutating him. Lam realised that the only person that could contain all of the Adam of Rapture was one who had previously been a little sister. She decided that her daughter would be the next subject as the sea slug inside her protected her from the genetic damage that would be caused by using Adam. Therefore, Dr. Lam began injecting Eleanor with massive doses of Adam and glorifying her as a holy vessel for her followers in the Rapture family.
Eleanor was confined to Persephone and the Fontaine Futuristics building.
Horrified at seeing the changes Dr. Alexander had went through as the experiment began to fail, she became more rebellious, seeing the hypocrisy in her mother's altruistic beliefs and wanted to escape. To further her plans, Sophia needed a large supply of Adam. She had control over most of Rapture's populace through the influence of the Rapture family, but the little sisters who could supply Adam were becoming too old. Thus, in 1967, Big Sisters were sent up to the surface to abduct little girls to be converted into new little sisters so that Sophia could restart the Gatherer program.
One of these girls being Cindy, whose father, Mark Meltzer, followed various clues and sightings of the Big Sisters until eventually discovering Rapture.
Noticing the influx of missing girls on the surface, Bridget Tenenbaum became suspicious and returned to Rapture to save them. Arriving in Rapture, Tenenbaum finds that she was correct in her suspicions and teams up with Augustus Sinclair. As a result of her mother's experiments and plans for her, Eleanor starts to think of an escape. Eleanor had formed a bond with the new little sisters kidnapped from the surface,
and could control their actions outside of Persephone.
Using them, she is able to carry out her plans around the city, even though her mother had her trapped in confinement. Part of Eleanor's rebellion against her mother was remembering her time with her bonded Big Daddy, Subject Delta, who was murdered in front of her. Through her influence over little sisters, Eleanor manages to find Delta's body and extract a gene sample. She uses this sample to calibrate the Vita chambers to his genetic frequency. She also contacts Bridget Tenenbaum, requesting her aid in undoing the psychological conditioning that had been imprinted in Delta's mind when he was a Big Daddy. Roughly 10 years after Delta's death, in 1968, Eleanor's plan succeeds in bringing her Big Daddy back. Delta is revived at a Vita chamber and begins to retrieve telepathic messages from Eleanor, pleading for help. Delta encounters Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum, who tells him that in order to save Eleanor and stop Lam, he must travel across the ruins of Rapture to Fontaine Futuristics. If he does not, his bond will stop his heartbeat if he strays too far from his little sister, preventing him from escaping Rapture and eventually killing him. On his journey, Delta is aided by Tenenbaum's new ally, Augustus Sinclair. Delta discovers that Lam plans to use Adam to transform her daughter into a superhuman being with all the knowledge of Rapture's intellectual elite. Lam will then use the same conditioning methods used on Jack to destroy Eleanor's sense of self, brainwashing her into acting only for her goals. He also discovers Sinclair's agenda: take control of Rapture from Lam, cannibalize its technology,
and sell it to the surface world using his lifeboat in Persephone. With Delta on his way, Bridget Tenenbaum reactivates Subject Sigma, formerly Charles Melton Porter, from cold storage and tasks him with retrieving the Thinker's codes and blueprints, believing that these codes could be used to recreate the Thinker on the surface and create a cure for splicing and the Adam sickness. Although not speaking to him herself, she utilizes the Thinker to speak to him as Charles, creating a way for Sigma to learn about his past life on his journey without being aware of it. On his way through Rapture, Delta is stopped at Pauper's Drop, a region controlled by Grace Holloway, a loyal member of the Rapture family. Many years before, she had been instructed by Sophia Lamb to watch over Eleanor during her incarceration in Persephone, but on a trip to Dionysus Park, Eleanor was kidnapped. Later seeing Eleanor as a little sister, Grace had attempted to pick her up, but Delta responded by breaking her jaw, this forming a hatred for all Big Daddies. With Sophia now in control of Rapture, and with Grace's hatred for Delta, she does her best to halt his journey and keep him from Eleanor. Her belief that Big Daddies only cause pain wherever they go. Making his way through Pauper's Drop, Delta encounters Grace and acquires a key required to reactivate the lockdown train system. Now face to face with Grace, he's given the option to kill her and prove her beliefs correct on Big Daddies, or spare her and change her mind.
On his way to Eleanor, Sophia does what she can to halt Delta's journey. He comes across Father Simon Wales, a blindly zealous splicer who believes that Eleanor is the key to paradise. Wales fires a torpedo at Delta's train car, which he is using to travel through Rapture. The torpedo badly damages the train car, which results in Delta having to look for another one. Delta goes through Siren Alley, where Wales has set up a temple for the Rapture family.
After killing Father Simon Wales, he drains the water from Dionysus Park using Siren Alley's pumps, aware that the park had a train car that he could use to access Fontaine Futuristics.
Delta enters Dionysus Park, but finds that the train cars are locked down, courtesy of Stanley Poole.
Fearful of people now coming to the drained park and discovering his misdeeds.
After helping Poole stop Little Sisters from collecting the leftover Adam in the area, which contains memories of his actions against Sophia, Delta is made aware that Poole was partially responsible for him being put in prison, in turn resulting in him becoming a Big Daddy. He is then given the choice of either killing or sparing the man by Sophia.
After a while of searching Rapture, Mark finally discovers his daughter in Dionysus Park, but is upset to see that she does not recognize him. A big sister then attacks him and takes both him and his daughter to Fontaine Futuristics to Sophia. Here, Sophia gives Mark the option to be executed for trespassing in her city, or be turned into a Big Daddy and bonded to his daughter. Although bonded and mentally conditioned, he believed that to be better than dying and being away from her.
After finally making it to Fontaine Futuristics, Delta now meets Gilbert Alexander, who is now deeply insane due to absorbing a massive amount of Adam. Delta retrieves a gene sample and before leaving is once again given the choice of ending or sparing Gilbert's life, the man responsible for turning him into a Big Daddy.
Using the gene sample, Delta finally makes it to Persephone, where Eleanor is being held.
As he enters, he finds Eleanor locked within a quarantine chamber with Sophia. Before Delta can enter the chamber, Sophia smothers the sleeping Eleanor with a pillow. This stops her heart long enough for Delta's body to shut down due to his bond with the girl, resulting in him being knocked unconscious. Delta is captured by Lamb and his pair bond with Eleanor is severed, weakening his heart in the process. With Delta imprisoned, Lamb's followers find and capture Augustus Sinclair, where they quickly convert him into an Alpha Series Big Daddy under her control. Using the Little Sisters, Eleanor sends a special plasmid to Delta that will allow him to take control of a Little Sister. Following Eleanor's instructions, as a Little Sister, Delta brings her parts of the Big Sister armor, turning her into one. This allows Eleanor to free Delta and fight by his side. They decide to make their escape from Rapture using Sinclair's escape pod. Attempting to force Delta to surrender,
Sophia directs her followers to set explosive charges throughout Persephone.
She also sends Sinclair against his will to distract Delta and keep him from advancing. During their escape, Delta is forced to kill Sinclair. Eleanor and Delta make it to the escape pod where Sophia waits inside, but an explosive final trap outside the pod by Sophia mostly wounds Delta.
As Persephone collapses,
the pod starts to rise to the surface and water pours in from the explosion. Eleanor makes the choice to save her mother from drowning, choosing to forgive her. Arriving at the surface, Eleanor uses her big sister needle to absorb Delta's Adam and conscience so that they can be together forever, with Delta guiding Eleanor's actions and drives.
After many of Reedwall's attempts to stop Subject Sigma from entering Minerva's den, Reed is killed and Sigma retrieves the blueprints and codes for the Thinker. Here, Sigma discovers his own identity of Charles Milton Porter, and that it was actually the Thinker that had been emulating his voice this whole time. guiding him through Minerva's den. Shortly after, Tenenbaum returns to the surface with Sigma and reverts him back to a normal functioning human with help from the Thinker. And now, she planned to use it to synthesize a cure for splicing.
It is unknown what became of the city of Rapture. Without maintenance workers to fix the repairs, it is likely that by the beginning of the 21st century, Rapture will have crumbled into a barren, uninhabitable ruin. With no life remaining in the city, all buildings will likely have collapsed, with all interior areas having been flooded and destroyed. There's always a lighthouse, there's always a man, there's always a city. How these turn out are simply down to constants and variables.
Hello everyone that made it this far. Thank you for watching the final Bioshock timeline episode. This one took a while, possibly 8 months. I'll link the previous 2 parts below. They cover Columbia and then the rise of Rapture. If you like this video, then that would help so much. If you could share it, that would be incredible. I'd like to thank the guys that have been waiting for this one and being super patient. I'd also like to thank my patrons: Scruffshroom, Sheev Palpatine, ZeroXP Podcast, The Arbiter, Lewis, Jojoscotia, Detroid, Brunette Jnas, Imaginary Holly, Arko, and Avi WV. Your support means so much. Tell me which timeline you'd like to see next. We're seeing the end of this video in sight. I haven't slept much in the past few days, and so I hope you enjoy this. I'll see you in the next one. I'm gonna get some sleep. Goodbye.